to Silicon Zombies, where you get the best brains from the Bay and beyond. We are here to demystify emerging technology and tell remarkable stories with awesome people. So super grateful for Mr. Andy Ardilla, who has generously offered the Union House. So make sure to say hi and thank you to Andy. And we've got some remarkable speakers as well. So we've got Primero Negocios, who does our marketing. If you're looking for a growth engine, make sure to talk to these guys. We'll have their information in the show notes. And also very grateful for Nicodex, who builds web and mobile products. So if you're looking for a team, both these folks are based in Mexico. They've done incredible work for our community. So without any further ado, let's light this candle. Let's get things going. Sharon, do you want to kick things off and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm the group publisher of San Francisco and Silicon Valley magazines. I have a deep passion for what's coming next in San Francisco, so I couldn't be more excited to have this conversation. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much.
I thought it would be great to start with, as a magazine publisher, I keep track of the press, and there's just horrible doom and gloom, death spiral stories about San Francisco all over the place. Can you give us a really honest, practical state of the union of where we really are with our city?
Sure. I've actually never used those two words together. I've been committed my entire life to this city and to this community. Actually,
I'm sorry, can we cut real quick? Your pod, I would love for you to raise this a little bit higher.
Thank you, Pee-wee.
And yours as well, Sharon.
Oh.
For all the folks who see this live, this is what happens when it's live. Okay, perfect.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
And action.
Oh,
Dan Lurie, please.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
All right.
You want
Should I ask the question again, or? No. Okay.
Okay, I'll keep going.
Perfect.
I've been committed to this community for the last 20 plus years. I was born and raised in San Francisco. I mean, your viewers can't see this beautiful view. We got the fog pouring in over the bay. When we are at our best, this is the greatest city in the world. To combat the narrative that has been consuming our city for good reason, and it's overblown at times for sure. I started something called the Civic Joy Fund with Manny Yucatel of Manny's about almost 2 years ago now, to get more art, more culture, more vibrancy on our city streets. Everything that I've ever done has been committed to lifting community up. I brought Super Bowl 50 to the San Francisco Bay Area. Like I refuse to succumb to that narrative. But that is all done in spite of the leadership inside City Hall. The City Hall insiders I'm running against have built up a broken, inefficient, and corrupt City Hall bureaucracy. But it's the entrepreneurs and it's the innovators and it's the people that you all are interviewing daily that are helping us overcome that narrative. And it's the entrepreneurs and the artists and the creatives that are going to lead us out of this time.
Got it. And what made San Francisco beautiful all throughout its wonderful history. So Dan, you bring up kind of a unique lens, not having served in public office. What does that lens look like and how's it going to affect San Francisco?
That is the narrative that I don't have City Hall experience, and I am grateful to that. In this sense, I am not a product of the broken system, but I have worked with people in City Hall. To bring Super Bowl 50 here, I worked with Mayor Liccardo in San Jose and Mayor Schaff in Oakland. And Mayor Lee asked me to run that. And so I had to work with departments. I had to work with mayors across this great region of ours to bring that game here. And I've also built housing here in San Francisco. I got it done on time, under budget, with good paying union labor. Yes, under budget.
That's not two words you don't typically hear together.
Exactly.
On time?
On time. And I was able to work with all 11 supervisors. I got a unanimous vote. And so when people talk about my experience, I have a track record of getting big things done, working with the private sector, working with the public sector, and I do know people in City Hall. There's some really good people, but we need new, accountable leadership.
Yeah, well put.
You just told me a really impactful story about what made you decide to run for mayor. I'd love for you to share that with.
Okay. Listen, I was chair of Tipping Point. So I was CEO of an organization called Tipping Point. I founded it in 2005. with a few others, and our focus was on alleviating poverty and tackling issues of poverty, whether it was housing, employment, job training, working with great nonprofits throughout this region, holding them accountable, and making sure that if they weren't delivering, we cut funding and we redirected resources to high-performing organizations. So this notion of accountability has been built into my DNA from the start, and it's something I don't see at City Hall. But there was a moment last June, I was walking my kids to school. It was a beautiful June day, much like the day we have here in San Francisco. And I had my daughter in one hand and my son on the other hand. We were walking across Valencia Street. And we came upon a man who was screaming. He was in distress. He did not have clothes on. And my kids just gave me that look like, you're the guy that always talks about taking care of people and looking out and giving people opportunities, and yet here we have this man in distress. And it was at that moment that I knew that I had more work to do. That, to be quite honest, we all as San Franciscans had failed to deliver for this person, and we all see it when we walk our streets. We see the suffering. We see that, honestly, it's not compassionate to let somebody stay on the street. And so in that moment, I was like, I have more work to do, and that was really the moment I decided to run for mayor of San Francisco.
You know, we work with all of the charitable organizations, locally, nationally, and I have to say Tipping Point truly is magical. I think there's a reason you've been able to secure the funding you have, the awareness you have, the quality of members you have. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've created that, the accountability piece? Because I think, from my perspective, that's an amazing template of how you would be as a mayor.
I appreciate that, and it took a whole team of people to build that. I had the honor to start it in 2005 with 3 others, Ronnie Lott, Chris James, and Katie Page. The 4 of us got it started. I was the CEO for 15 years. And we said right from the beginning, we had to do things differently. If we were working with a housing group, we wanted to embed metrics into every contract. Okay, so if someone comes through your housing program and they graduate from it, are they staying housed 6 months out, 12 months out, 18 months out? If they are, great, let's keep funding them. There's a group in our portfolio still to this day, the homeless prenatal program. It's called HPP now. It's on 18th and Potrero. 19 years in, we are still funding. But there are groups that have not performed, and we have worked our best to get them on track, implementing, Salesforce databases, making sure they're tracking client outcomes. But if they're not delivering, we had a responsibility to our donors, and we've raised over $500 million to date at Tipping Point. Wow. We had a responsibility to invest their dollars wisely. And we demanded accountability of our groups because our donors were demanding accountability of us. Because the difference also for Tipping Point is there's never been an endowment. We had to go out and fundraise each and every year. We had to stay hungry. We had to prove ourselves each and every year. So whatever we raise at Tipping Point, it goes out. And just a public service announcement, I'm not engaged in or involved. I had to step down when I launched my candidacy for mayor. But they continue to perform at a high level, and we are the model for how people should invest their philanthropic dollars. And this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to take the taxpayers' money and the residents' money here of San Francisco and deliver for them. Every single taxpayer dollar should be held to account, just like we held our dollars to account at Tipping Point.
Well, we have so many entrepreneurs in the room, right? And they have to be accountable to their investors. And technically, we're all investors in the city, right?
Absolutely.
So I love you're an entrepreneur and you treat the nonprofits as if they're entrepreneurs and they have responsibility. And I think everyone who is in a city should be part of that symbiosis between us all.
The one thing I always said to our program managers was, we had 4 program managers, housing, education, employment, early childhood, that they are stewards of, in this case, our donors' money. The department heads that are going to report into me when I take the oath of office on January 8th, 2025, they are going to be stewards of the taxpayers' money. These department heads run their departments like their own fiefdoms. There's no collaboration, there's no cooperation, there's no accountability to the people here in San Francisco. That is going to change. I am going to hold them accountable to me. They're going to be accountable to each other. I'm going to pull them out onto the street and ask them why haven't they delivered if they told me that they're working on a project. And I'm going to demand to know what they're up to each week for 6 months and 12 months. And there's going to be metrics embedded into, wow.
That's Titanic, isn't it? It's just feeling very nostalgic right now.
If you didn't hear it, that was a Titanic song. Somebody's room.
Somebody hold me.
Whoever's phone that was, you need to send that to me. That was amazing.
So, Dan, so obviously, like, homelessness is a huge problem to tackle. You very much strike me as a candidate of common sense. What are your top few strategies, concrete-wise, like to tackle this big challenge?
Okay. Right now, we have a mayor with no plan, and it's been evident for a number of years now. And now we see this administration just ripping tents away from people with no plan on where they should go. First 6 months of my administration, we're standing up 1,500 emergency shelter beds. They're going to be safe. They're going to be dignified. Second, we're going to offer people bus tickets home through a program that has been called Homeward Bound, which we have had in place for 15, 20 years. That was basically ended during COVID for understandable reasons, but has not really been restarted properly by this administration. I will restart that in a major way. Then we need to build more mental health and drug treatment beds. So people are gonna have 4 options. Okay. Safe, dignified shelter, bus ticket home, treatment on demand, which means that when you want treatment, you can get it. Right now, when you want it and you've met that moment and you're in the throes of your addiction, you're right now turned away 50% of the time at city-run clinics. That has to end. So we have to deliver on the promise of treatment on demand. And then if we have the beds, we can mandate treatment, thanks to a bill called SB 43 of the state. But you have to have the beds.
Yeah.
We're spending $700 million a year on our behavioral health system here in San Francisco. We have not built enough of those beds. So there's gonna be those 4 options. And the 5th option, now that we have this grants passed, the Supreme Court overruled this injunction that allows us to remove tents from the street. You can cite and arrest. That is obviously the last thing that we want, but it is a tool that we need to have in our toolkit. And here's the one option you will not have when I'm mayor. You will not have the option to stay on our streets any longer.
Sure.
We're going to send a message.
That's beautiful. We should give that a round of applause. That's amazing. And for the bus ticket home, what about, is there also like flights included? So maybe it's like, I got to get home to the Amalfi Coast or something like that.
No, it's just a bus ticket, and we'll give them food vouchers.
Okay,
good. We're going to send a message loud and clear to the rest of the country and frankly the world that you do not come to San Francisco to deal drugs, to do drugs, or to sleep on our streets. We have to send that message loud and clear to everybody, and I will.
Why hasn't that been done in the past, do you think?
We lost control of our streets. We have a Department of Public Health that for years put up billboards. I mean, within the last 3 years, we had billboards around this city that said, when you do drugs, do them with friends so you don't overdose. Okay? Now, in the last year and a half, they put up billboards that say, don't do drugs, they kill you. Fentanyl has changed the game. So I will say that 810 people died of overdose last year on our streets and in our SROs and in people's homes. There's nothing compassionate about that. There's nothing progressive about that. And we need to change the tune. And it starts with the mayor and it goes to the Department of Public Health. We need people understanding that we have to get people into treatment.
Yeah, this kind of naturally leads into a conversation about safety. And, I'm not sure how much homeless drives a city being unsafe. I'm curious your thoughts on that. But what's your plan for kind of the safety? What are the biggest problems affecting people's safety in the city, and how do we fix that?
So first off, homelessness and the drug crisis. We have a drug crisis, and an economic recovery crisis. We have all 3. And they are interrelated at times. But that's why I want to stand up the shelter beds so that people, when they do fall into homelessness, that it's brief, it's rare, and it's one time, and then people don't fall into addiction and mental health issues on the street. So those 2 are definitely interconnected. On the public safety front, whatever you want to say, this mayor defunded the police or stripped funding to the tune of $120 million. We've had an exodus of police officers since that, and actually prior to that as well. We should be around 2,000 police officers. We're below 1,500. I have said from day one of my administration that you need to, of my campaign, and I will.
Nice. I like that you're leading with positivity, though. That's good.
Fully staff our police department.
Yeah.
Fully staff our sheriff's department, and fully staff our 911 dispatch office.
Yeah.
We need officers out walking the beat in commercial corridors, getting to know the merchants, out on patrol. Right now, out in a place in the Richmond, I know you have people watching from all over, but the Richmond district, 100,000 residents. On a good day, there's 3 patrol officers.
Wow.
So we got people running red lights and stop signs. We got these motorcycle gangs that we read about this past Sunday, tearing through North Beach and the Mission, running red lights, hundreds of bikers, no license plates. There's a sense of disorder on our streets. And that is something that this administration has failed to create a sense of order. And that comes with having more officers out on the beat. Police are not the answer to all of our problems, but we need more visible presence so people know that if you're going to commit a crime, you're going to get caught. And the last thing I'll say is, because it is interrelated, I want to get our police officers and our firefighters out of the business of being our homeless outreach workers and our mental health counselors. And so I have a comprehensive plan on how we hit the mental health and drug crisis, but that will allow us to pull police officers back and do more of that preventative.
Speaking of police officers on the beat, who's heard of the Tenderloin district in San Francisco? So fun fact about the city, the Tenderloin was referred to as that because of the police were getting kickbacks because it was kind of a dangerous part of a job. And so theoretically, they could afford a tenderloin steak for dinner every night. So I don't know if that's actually true, but kind of interesting piece of history. You know, speaking of monetary policy in dollars, what are some of your plans for this economic recovery? You know, there's San Francisco residents, there's the highest amount of revenue per resident in the country. Did I get that right?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So how can we turn this around so it's a city for everybody, Dan?
$15.9 billion budget we just passed for 807,000 residents. Okay, this is not a crisis of resources in our city; it's a crisis of leadership.
Oh.
We are facing down the barrel of probably a $1.5 billion budget deficit. We have a structural budget deficit in our city. We need to get that under control. We need a mayor that is not going to keep kicking the can down the road on making tough decisions, which this mayor has done over and over again. We need to get business back here. We need to get conventions back here. We need to get tourism back here. And that starts with clean and safe streets. So we talked about that. So we have to address that, especially downtown and in our neighborhoods as well. And we need to make sure that we streamline permitting. We need to make it easier for small businesses to get up and running and stay in business. I was just out in the Sunset at a place called Hourland. It's a great restaurant. You should all go check it out if you haven't. And they talk about being feed to death. I met with a group of small business owners and restaurateurs. The city and this administration looks at successful entrepreneurs and businesses as a revenue source instead of a place that is drawing tourism in or drawing visitors out to, in this case, out near Ocean Beach.
Yeah.
I am going to run a city that embraces our entrepreneurs, that embraces our innovators, that makes it easier to do business if you're running a bar or a restaurant, not harder to do business. And then downtown, we need to transform how we think of downtown, much like New York did after September 11, 2001. They created a Lower Manhattan Development Corporation. They got the best of the private sector and the government sector together to think and reimagine what downtown could be. They've done a great job. We are going to create something similar in my administration. We are going to have a downtown San Francisco Development Corporation. We're going to think about what we do with the 37 million square feet of empty office space.
Wow.
I'm going to embrace clean tech and entrepreneurs coming in to help us fight this climate crisis that we are in. I want us to reclaim the mantle of being the climate hub of the world.
Yeah.
We've lost that to New York and Austin and other cities around the globe. We used to lead on climate. we're going to again.
Yeah,
Under my
it's
watch.
amazing. I just got goosebumps. I love that. That's great. Yeah. Yeah.
So when the economy starts getting better in San Francisco, which it will,
Yes,
thank
absolutely.
you very much for that. What ends up happening is then the companies are all desperate to hire people who can code and people to work in the restaurants. And
Yes.
you know, how do we attack the housing affordability problem? How do we keep workers here? How do we keep companies here? What's the answer to that?
And Nick, you're following me because I didn't answer that whole question, so I appreciate it. I'd rather answer your questions than his questions.
She's nicer to look at too.
Yeah. So I mean, we absolutely have an affordability crisis, and what that requires us to do is build more housing, to have great public schools, to make sure our streets are safe and welcoming to people, young families. I want them to think that they, and young people, I want them to think that they have a long-term future here in San Francisco. And safety, affordability, and our public schools are 3 issues. And the affordability thing is around housing. I'm excited because I know how to do this. I've built housing in this city. I said it before, I built housing on time and under budget. We built 145 units on Bryant Street for $377,000 a unit. It might sound high to people across this country. In San Francisco, it's unheard of.
Yeah.
And we have a model. We use modular. We use an innovative approach. We use modular construction at a factory called Factory OS out in Vallejo. We trucked in the units. The carpenters built it. The trades actually did the finishing. And we know how to do this. And there's been a model now that John Sobravo and Apple have also come in and partnered. There's a 135 unit senior housing building going up using similar financing and run by the same people that helped us build Bryant Street. So we know how to do this. We have the lands. We have places like the southeast part of the city, Candlestick Point. We have a place downtown we can do along commercial corridors. I mean, we're sitting here on Van Ness, and this is an 8-9 story building. I've said 6 to 8 stories along some commercial corridors like Van Ness. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. We have the space to build. We have to get more housing built. Right now, the White House just called us out on this. 33 months just to get through permitting here in San Francisco. Time, costs, money. It's embarrassing the bureaucracy that these city hall insiders that I'm running against have built up. I figured out a way to get stuff done in spite of them, and I will, as mayor, make sure that we get more housing built.
That's amazing.
It's incredible. And when we think about like transportation, because obviously the city is 7 by 7 miles, it's very walkable, but also it's helpful to have transportation. There's you got Waymo and all kinds of autonomous vehicles. Tell us a little bit about your plans for transportation.
We need clean, safe, reliable muni. We need protected bike lanes throughout this city. We need to, if we're gonna get people out of their cars, it has to be clean and safe and reliable muni. But we're also not gonna get everybody out of their cars, but if we can, let's get them into EVs, which is gonna require us to have more chargers, or at least some chargers. I want 10,000 street side chargers, so that everyone can know that they can charge up in the city. Right now, you have to really know where to go and or have a garage that you can park in, and that just makes it not feasible for most San Francisco residents. And then we have to make our streets safe. I keep looking down this corridor.
It's beautiful.
The Van Ness bus, the rapid bus lane. The only problem with that is it took about 5 years for them to do about 15 or 20 blocks. We have to streamline this. And yes, I love that we're the home of autonomous vehicles. Let's get autonomous buses going. Let's get more people riding in modes of transportation. Mm-hmm. But it's got to be clean, it's got to be safe, and it's got to be reliable. Too many people that I know have had really tough experiences riding public transportation. Yeah. And so we got to get more ambassadors riding those buses. We got to get those people that are struggling with addiction, mental health issues that are riding those buses all day long. Yeah. We got to get them off the bus and into treatment beds. But for us to be a world-class city, we need a world-class public transportation system. Sure.
I kind of get the sense that you're like a practical hero, right? Like you're very clear on saving and fixing major problems, but very, very practical. And I'm
You
wondering.
tell my wife about the hero part. No one's ever called me a hero, so I'm really.
Well, I'm thinking.
This is being recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, we're live.
I heard you went to Barnard, so you're awesome. No, I asked that because it sounds like you kind of came from a history of heroes, right? Your father being a rabbi, and Levi is in doing a lot for the LGBT community and employment. I'd love to kind of hear about growing up with such high achievers and how that's really affected you.
I mean, so I haven't shared this story with many people, really at all during this campaign, but it actually starts with my grandmother, my mom's mom, who escaped out of Yugoslavia during World War II, escaped the Nazis, came out, actually went to Italy, was one of 1,000 Jews let in by really Eleanor Roosevelt, not FDR. She sort of convinced him that he had to let some Jews in, and 1,000 people came over by boat, and she ended up in a kind of an internment camp in Oswego, New York. And so she's the first hero, at least in my story. My parents moved to San Francisco, and I was born here. My mom was born in Maryland. My dad in Cleveland. They got divorced when I was 2. My mom remarried my stepfather when I was 4. His name's Peter. It was Peter Haas. He's no longer with us. He was part of the Levi Strauss family. So you're gonna read a lot, hear a lot about me, and the first thing people say is Levi's. I'm like, great. I mean, it is an iconic San Francisco company that, as you said, took care of its workforce, its LGBTQ workers, gave them rights long before it was required by law. He helped the company desegregate the factories in the South long before other companies did. So watching my stepfather and growing up in and around that company, knowing that you could do well, but also do good by your workers always, that hit home. My dad was a rabbi also before I was born at Temple Emmanuel here on Arguello. But he ran the Jewish Community Federation, and he helped tens of thousands of Jews through persecution during the 80s and 90s in places like Ethiopia and Russia, helping people he would never meet in his entire life. My mom was always focused on early childhood education. My stepmom and her family always focused actually on lifelong learning at the Fromm Institute. So to your point, kind of everywhere I looked, grandmother, my parents, they were like, you better be involved and engaged, and you have an obligation to serve your community, and that's what led me to Tipping Point.
I love this. I just mentioned your wife, Becca.
Yes.
So I'm asking this question as a woman because men always ask women this question, and so I'm turning the tables back. You're the dad of 2 kids, you have a wife who works and does amazing things. How are you going to handle all that?
Heavy sigh.
Here's what I would say. We have 2 amazing kids. We have a 13-year-old daughter, 10-year-old son. They're incredible. They're the best things that the 2 of us will ever produce. And they got good heads on their shoulders. They better say please and thank you every single moment. I think they have, people in their lives, and my wife, who has worked every day of every week that I've known her, and I've known her since 2001, so we're 23 years together now.
Wow.
She's never stopped working. During COVID, she was an essential worker working up in Sacramento. She'd come home on weekends to not 2 kids, but really 3 kids. And she's an inspiration and a role model to the 2 of them, and I think they've been very supportive of what I'm doing right now. And they're focused on their school, and he's into sports, and my daughter's all into ballet. So they got good heads on their shoulder, and they're all being very supportive of me right now, which is I appreciate.
So we're going to turn this to the audience and get some questions for Dan in just a moment. But I wanted to see if you could share a couple of your favorite restaurant recommendations in this city for us here.
Oh,
This is a great question. We just did an event with Tyler Florence for Best of the Day, and he was talking about how
that was super
restaurants
fun.
are super healing to the city. It brings people in.
yes.
So this is the perfect last question.
I consider Tyler a very good friend. He and Tolan have always been great to Tipping Point, really supportive of us. And so actually I just had a great coffee at his shop in Union Square. I'm gonna go, I just went to Pizzetta 211 out in the Richmond district. That's an amazing place. this is hard. Then there you got Patonia, you got Hamburger Haven, Bill's Place, Gordo's,
Mel's.
Mel's.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've been to Mel's.
Okay.
Right here on
Murad's
Yeah.
amazing. Murad.
Murad. Yes. Oh yeah. Is that a picture?
That's in,
Or is that on California?
yeah,
But he's got a couple, I think.
yes.
Anyway, there's a lot of good, and absolutely, the restaurants are what bring people here. And I said Outerlands before.
Yes.
And I had an event at That's Amore on Ocean Ave last night, so I just got a lot of plugs in.
That's fantastic. Good. I think we hit our restaurant recommendation quota, so thank you. So let's toss this to the audience here. We've got Wendy Shu. Wendy, please. In fact, can you stand up and introduce yourself?
Hi Daniel, I've met you before
Hi,
at
Wendy.
another event. I'm a San Francisco native, born and raised here. My father's house is right by Outerlands. So you're speaking to the choir. I also work in poverty alleviation. I guess my question is, how can people like me support your campaign?
I love that.
Great question. Nice. Nicely done,
You
Wendy.
can help get people to events. I'm going from here to another event, actually in Cal Hollow at an art gallery. We're trying to get as many people to our house parties and our meet and greets. We've done over 200 of these. Spread the word on social, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram. If you want the pain of X, then you can also follow us there. And then really the most important thing is help us go door knock, phone bank, and most importantly, put Dan Lurie #1.
That's right. On the
If
ticket.
there's someone that I can connect with, that would be great, because I'm also part of Rotary Club of San Francisco.
Great.
Too. Spin Sisters, like I'm involved a lot in this
Love it.
community.
Wendy also.
Val, we got, and Fernando. We got 3 people here that can help.
Wendy also builds schools in Nepal, so thank you for your great work, Wendy.
What's the program called?
It's Building Education,
Okay.
it's nonprofit.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Great.
I'm also running to a meeting.
Okay, good,
Thank you so
good.
much.
And any other questions? We also are streaming live, so Peter Wang, if we wanted to ask some questions. Oh, we've got Danny in the back. Daniel Oskowski, CEO of Skunk Lock.
Great name, by the way.
Great name,
I
Dan.
love the
Good.
recommendations of restaurants are all a few blocks from me, so all amazing.
Good.
Everything you said today is completely well thought out and reasonable. As also a San Francisco native born and raised, I want to know after you're elected, what am I not going to do? I know that's a tough
Curveball.
No, it's a
It
good
always
question.
happens to me when I, so
Yeah.
just be upfront, and I want to see if I can live with it. You know?
We're first off, I have no political aspirations beyond this job. And I'm going to serve, hopefully, as your mayor for 8 years. I have bold plans to not only bring the city back, but take it to new heights. And we're going to have to make some tough calls on the budget. We're going to have to cut groups that we like funding in the nonprofit space. Right now, there's 248 nonprofits working on housing and homelessness, but there's no metrics or accountability built into those contracts with many of those groups. Those groups can contract with up to 8 different city departments. I'm pulling contracting out of those departments, and we're gonna have a centralized unit where people have to go through. And then we're gonna build metrics into everything. And a lot of nonprofits, some of which you and I both might know, may not get funding again from the city. So we're gonna have to make tough calls like that. We're going to have to make changes in different departments in terms of the leadership of those. I'm running against people that are telling everybody who they're going to be firing. That is not how I lead, but on November 6th, my transition will start, and I will be interviewing every department head and saying, okay, do you want to be held accountable in a way that you've never been? And so we're not going to always agree on everything. And that is how one needs to lead. You can't please everybody. I'm going to walk into this office not owing anybody anything. I'm running against the status quo and a pretty big political machine that is terrified of somebody walking into that office without owing anybody any favors. The City Hall insiders I'm running against have all been in office for nearly a decade or more, a combined total of 70 years in office. There's a reason why they keep getting elected over and over again, because they owe people things. So I'm going to just tell you, we're going to, build more housing. We're going to make sure our schools are well run. and that the SFUSD is, there's gonna be strings attached to our funding going forward. And there's gonna be different parties that are upset about me upsetting the status quo. And if you're an entrepreneur, you get it. Like, we have to think differently. We have to get creative, and we have to hold people accountable, and that means making those tough calls on the budget, and that is gonna upset people. And might upset you.
Good answer.
Yeah. Yes, please.
I love everything. Miriam.
Miriam, yeah, introduce yourself, please.
I love everything you said, but I have a very easy one for you. It's a specific one.
Those are usually the hardest.
How are you going to fix corporations?
Ooh.
And towing fees.
How many times has your car been towed?
Well, I mean, I've lived all around San Francisco.
Yeah, just give me it's an easy question.
3 times.
I like it, spicy.
That I looked into the stats.
Yeah.
Like San Francisco has the highest towing fees in the nation.
3 times less fun.
Yeah.
Like, it is
In the last
insane.
week.
It's not the administrative cost. It's like, it's just the miscellaneous thing.
Oh, so one thing that, back to the first question, what you might not love is, I really think we need to use technology for enforcement of our traffic laws, like red light cameras or speed cameras. So you all might not like getting those red light camera tickets. We need more officers out on patrol, not only walking the beat, but actually in patrol cars. We need to be doing the bait car situation that they just started doing a few months ago. I don't know why it took them so long, but
Can you explain what the bait
so
car is?
you have a car with goods in it, and cops are watching it, and when it's broken into, you can swoop in.
Yeah.
They've done it at
Yeah.
the Palace of Fine Arts.
They fill it with confetti, I think, right? Right.
Well, there's some weird stuff that they do, but you can have bait cars. But here's what we really need. We need these criminals to know that they are going to get caught. Right now, whether you walk into a Walgreens or a CVS or whatever it is, people don't think they're going to get caught, and we have to change that. And then we need, and I think the DA is doing a good job. I think our judges need to hold people accountable in a way that they haven't been to my liking. And so we need law enforcement working together, coordinated effort on this. But it really requires us having more police out on patrol. So that's a big thing. The towing fees, I would just suggest you look at the signs and just park appropriately. The curves are faded, right? Well, we should paint those curves better.
Sounds like user error to me.
Okay, I'll work on that first. Okay.
So let's take a couple more questions. Peter, I don't know if there's one on. Oh, Peter has a question.
I have a question.
Please, yeah.
So earlier you mentioned that one of the your pillars to help homelessness is additional housing. I remember that
Shelter.
Shelter.
Yeah.
Shelter. I remember that I don't know if it was a few years ago or a year ago. There was they were trying to build additional shelter, but that ended up getting blocked by NIMBYs that apparently have been kind of the root cause of a lot of shelters here in San Francisco not being created, like not in my backyard.
Yeah.
What would be your plan of attack against dealing with that?
So I've not only built housing here, I've also built shelter. And at 33 Goff, we got 78 units built. We got them built for $34,000 a unit. The city and county actually did take this model and they implemented something similar in the Mission. $113,000 a unit. 34K versus 113,000. I'm going to work with community groups, and we're going to stand up those 1,500 emergency shelter beds in a number of places around the city. I don't have locations specified right now, but we have navigation centers around the city. There's one that I like to talk about on the Embarcadero. It's between the Ferry Building and the Giants baseball stadium. It's right around the corner, or around the curve as you're heading to the stadium, as you're heading south. No one wanted that navigation center. Okay, no one. All the neighbors were fighting against it, and it was put in by Mayor Lee. It came up for re-up for a vote. Neighbors didn't say anything because there was an agreement that you would make sure that it was clean and safe and dignified inside, and clean and safe outside. So if you have patrols, if you have cleanup, if you keep it pristine, which they have done, neighbors allow it in there. And so we're gonna do that. There'll be a commitment. And then you also do always have at your disposal emergency powers to stand up emergency shelter beds. If there was an earthquake tomorrow and we had 10,000 people on the streets of San Francisco, we would have 10,000 beds within a matter of weeks. Probably in a matter of a week, we could do it. Military grade type tents, safe, dignified shelter is absolutely possible. I'm going to make it happen. It is much better for everyone if we get people off the street and into safe, dignified shelter. It's better for the people on the street, and it's better for all of us and our children.
Beautiful. Next up, we've got Mr. Torrey Smith, who is the CEO of Indie Addicts. We've got the PillBot, which is a really cool med device. So, in fact, are you going to swallow the pill for us, or?
Let's do this.
Okay, good, yeah.
I run a local medical robotics startup,
Okay.
and we're not alone in sort of creating some really cool cutting-edge health tech.
Awesome.
I'm curious if it might be possible sometime, offline, to just talk about 5-10 years in the future, what could healthcare in the Bay Area
Love it.
right?
Please, let's do it. We gotta be a home of innovation. I mean, we are, we got AI, but I want us to once again be the home of innovation, whether it's med tech, whether it's clean tech, whether it's green tech. We gotta embrace our entrepreneurs.
Super excited. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Part of the exciting thing of like your family's history is that Levi's, it represents kind of like the picks and shovels, right? Like that was the foundation of the gold rush, much like AI infrastructure is part of the gold rush here. In fact, we've got Bill Berry, who's going to be hosting AI Infra pretty soon. On what day is it, Bill? September 27th. Good deal. So make sure to check that out in San Francisco. And do we have any more questions here? Anybody that wants to hop in? Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, you speak about accountability, and there's 13 candidates running for mayor, but the polls only show 5. How would you make it accountable that the polls have all 13 names on them?
I'm not responsible for those polls, as you know, but I'm glad that everybody who has made it is allowed to be on our ballot. I think anybody should be able to run and be on our ballot. I can't help you on the newspapers and whether or not you all are making it onto the polls, but I appreciate the situation. And this is a fellow candidate. You're working hard, and I'm seeing you out on the campaign trail a few different times, so it's good to see you here.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Laura, did you have a question?
Yeah.
So, hi, my name is Laura DeGro. I'm off and on San Francisco lifetime resident. I've been in D3 for 20 years. And I live 2 blocks that way, and I can tell you, when you said that the only problem with the BRT was that it took 5 years, that is absolutely not true. It killed a ton of local businesses.
Yeah.
People are running across the street to catch a bus in the middle of the street. There's a lot of problem with the BRT. And so, there are proposals to duplicate this problem throughout the city. What is your approach to those proposals?
So I appreciate you catching me on how I spoke about it. I actually was talking to a woman that takes it every day, and she feels unsafe every single day in just the bus shelter because of once again those that are struggling with mental health addiction. Those are treating it as a place to sleep instead of a place to wait for the bus. And yes, they did kill the small businesses. They did not think about how this would impact. And I mean, they are normally filthy and dirty. We need to make sure, I said it earlier tonight, it's gotta be clean, it's gotta be safe, it's gotta be reliable. And we have to look at what has worked and what hasn't worked with this. In some cases, I've heard ridership is up, but our businesses are down. And so we have to work with our small business community to make sure that they're bought on to it. I've told this to everybody. My administration is going to be one that brings people together, listens to community has input, things are not going to continue to be done to community. The head of the MTA, I mean, even the mayor now is saying, yeah, we haven't been so good at bringing in community dialogue. Well, she's had 6 years. It's time that we have a change at the top, a mayor that will bring people together, in this case, the business community and the MTA, to make sure that we do it well the next time. Because to your point, that what's happening on Terraville Street, complete nightmare. And now it's heading to Judah. And we have to put the brakes on that until we figure out how we're gonna get it done quickly, efficiently, and protecting our small businesses.
So, Dan, we talked a lot about very serious topics and very serious problems in the city, but one of my favorite taglines from your campaign is bringing the joy back to San Francisco. So let's end talking about that. How are you going to bring the joy back to San Francisco?
I mean, we talked about make San Francisco fun again.
I like that.
Like we need the arts and the culture. So for me, I went out to the shipyard a couple weeks ago and met with, there's probably about 30 artists, but there's 300 artist studios in one of these buildings. I want to create like an arts district. Maybe it's out there, maybe it's somewhere else, more live work spaces. What is going to bring San Francisco back is not only being, yes, we need to be friendly to our small businesses and our entrepreneurs and our innovators and the people watching, but we also have to bring our creatives back. It was the first working group that I put together, was a group of creatives, people that came here to start music companies and nightlife. I've talked to a really well-known music label head, and he's like, I want to base my company here in San Francisco. I want to bring music back here. I want to bring arts back here. So I'm going to team up with some great creatives, and we're going to bring San Francisco back on that front.
It's amazing. You know, speaking of small businesses, we want to thank Kate from Career Pathways for, and of course, Mr. Hassam Jafari from Buzzable for organizing tonight. Yeah. And
Those are friends at Union House.
oh, Union House. In fact, Andy, do you want to say a couple words about what you're working on?
Sure, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you very much for allowing us to be the host for this event. Mark McDonald is the developer of Union House, DM Development. My name is Andy Arvilla. I'm and David Costello. We're the listing agents for the available residences. We have 5 residences left at 41, 2 and 3 bedrooms. In an unbelievable location. Clearly you can see the quality of finishes and the amazing views that all of the residences offer. So yeah, we have all of our information online at unionhousesf.com. So if you're in the market, feel free to visit us and check us out and give us a call.
And
Andy and David are just amazing champions for the city, so thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
yeah, not to mention rates are getting cut, so act quick. Yeah. So great. Thank you so much, Dan Lurie. Thank you so much, Sharon. And for more of the best brands in the Bay, go to siliconzombies.com. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Thank you so much, everybody.